It looks like there is a high likelihood that Nick Chubb becomes a Houston Texan running back from Cleveland, who had several great years in Cleveland. And then injuries the last couple of years have really robbed him of those 2 seasons. A catastrophic knee injury 2 years ago, able to come back from that last season, but then broke a foot late in the season. And last year was the first season where you look at his numbers and you go, okay, well, that looks like a guy who might be a shell of what he used to be. I did not realize how amazing Nick Chubb's numbers had been for the Cleveland Browns when he was healthy. He didn't have a season where he was under 5 yards a carry.
Right.
In the first 4 or 5 years of his career. He was amazing.
And he ends up last year having 3.3 yards per carry.
Yeah.
Which does annoy me. Anybody who's read any of the articles about this signing, they just kind of lump in and they say, well, in the last 2 years, he's averaged 3.9 yards per carry. That's bogus because in 2023, before he got injured, he was running just as well as he's ever run. He was above 5 yards per carry as well. Last year, it was everything, and it wasn't just because he was on a bad Browns team. He'd been on bad Browns teams before. His yards after contact were much, much lower. He was at per attempt last year, where previously in his career it was 4 yards after contact. Some people point out that he was hit behind the line of scrimmage a lot. Sometimes that's what happens when a guy is less explosive than he used to be too, and you're not hitting the hole as hard. Yeah. So he just wasn't the same guy. This, in a lot of ways, feels like the Cam Akers signing, if they sign, where you're going to get him on a good deal, likely a one-year deal, a lot of incentives. Diana Rossini reported that he had better offers of more money elsewhere, and yet he feels like this is the best situation for him. And that makes me feel like, yes, this is the best situation for him. You're getting, if he hits those incentives, then God bless him, it was worth everything. If it doesn't work out, then just like, with Cam Akers, it worked out. You ended up getting draft compensation for him. But the upside, I think, is higher than it was even for Cam Akers.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, if you get you're not going to get peak Nick Chubb again, I don't think. But if you get a healthy percentage of peak Nick Chubb, and he's over the broken foot, and he's now 2 years removed from the knee injury. Here was Jeremy Fowler was the first one that I saw have this news yesterday, and it was on SportsCenter. Here was Jeremy Fowler with the first report on the Texans and Nick Chubb's mutual interest in one another.
Nick Chubb, free agent, one of the top free agent names still out there. I was told that he's hoping to sign here soon, and maybe he gets something done before a minicamp, gets into a team, four-time Pro Bowler. The return to Cleveland's not totally off the table from what I'm told, but drafted multiple running backs. I'm told Houston could be one to watch here. They've been looking at that running back market, maybe adding somebody with Joe Mixon.
Okay.
Yeah, so, it developed very quickly yesterday because that was yesterday morning.
Yep.
And then within a few hours, Jordan Schultz and Diana Rossini and probably others, those are the two I saw, basically said, no, this is expected to happen as long as he passes the physical.
Yep.
And probably it'll happen on Monday.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah, today. In town today. Take the physical, and then hopefully that will be fun. You know, if you get Nick Chubb. Now, I guess two interesting things here. There's probably more than that, but two that are just popping into my head as you and I are talking this through. I would love to know who the other teams were that were offering Nick Chubb more money to where he saw this as an opportunity to come here for less money. Because let's face it, I would imagine, and if Nick Chubb signs with the Texans, we'll get a chance to ask him this at some point. But what exactly? What's his motivation? You know, is this a 1 year prove it deal where he's expecting, if he has a good season, I don't think someone's going to fork over $20 million for him or something like that, but he gets one last good contract from somebody. I guess my question, Seth, is what would make this an enticing situation in which to take less money in what could be an incentive-laden contract when you consider that, A, Joe Mixon is here, and B, Joe Mixon did a lot of what he did last year on his own. It was not because of the blocking up front. Yeah,
the positives are, I think, specifically Joe Mixon, because I think I'm guessing Nick Chubb after the year he had a devastating injury 2 years ago, he doesn't. I think he probably realistically looks at it and is, I can't be expected to get 25 carries per game. I don't want to get 25 carries per game. I just want to go out and get back what I had on a one-year deal. and I can do it alongside a guy who is a workhorse, but that I'm going to get my reps and I can fit in seamlessly to this offense. Right. The downside is, man, that offensive line last year was not doing much for Joe Mixon. He had to do it on his own.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to see which, if Nick Chubb signs and after he talks to the media, who on the Texans did he talk to? I mean, Kamari Lassiter is a Georgia guy that probably has posters up, probably had posters up on his wall of Nick Chubb as his senior year in high school.
Yeah.
So, and whoever else the common ties are, I think it's the C.J. Stroud, it's Joe Mixon being here. A lot of times people might think, well, why would Nick Chubb want to go where there's already an established running back? In this situation, he wants to go specifically because there's an established running back. This is a prove-it year for him. And then if he had conversations with Nick Caley or DeMeco Ryans about just what they're planning to do on offense this year, it probably just felt like, all right, I like these guys' upside.
Yeah, it's a little, as we kind of talk it through, it reminds me a little of Dalton Schultz signing his 1 year. I'm not saying Dalton Schultz before getting here was what Nick Chubb was in Cleveland, but when Dalton Schultz signed here, it was before they'd even drafted C.J. Stroud. So when Schultz signed here, it was a bit of a bet. Casario, probably Bobby Slowick a little bit. Similarly, I think this is Nick Chubb coming in, and this is a bit of a bet on Nick Caley and Cole Popovich to some degree with Nick Chubb, right? So it's a little bit of unknown in a prove-it contract.
Yeah, and I think that with Mixon, too, it's I hope he didn't just think, oh, yeah, it's DeMeco Ryans. He came from San Francisco. Our offense is very similar to San Francisco, so it'll be the same offense. Because I don't think it's going to be.
No.
It's going to be a lot more like a New England offense. And I doubt he thought about it that way. But I think that's kind of like the knee-jerk, oh, yeah, they run like they're trying to be San Francisco, and that's very similar to Cleveland's scheme. I don't think it's not as basic as that. It's more basic in that I like the people who are in charge. I like the idea of being sharing carries with Joe Mixon, and I like C.J. Stroud.
Is there a dollar amount? I mean, it sounds like it's going to be a 1 year deal. Is there a 1 year deal?
I'm guessing it's like this is my pure and total guess.
Yeah,
I'm guessing it's like $4 million with a boatload of incentives.
I think so too. And what I was going to ask you was, is there a dollar amount where you would cringe a little bit and go, "Ooh, that's a little too much for Nick Chubb"?
If it was $10 million,
yeah, I think
or something like that.
Yeah,
it says Diana Rossini says it's going to be an incentive-laden contract.
Yeah.
And that tickles me where I like to be tickled.
Yeah, Joe, I mean, Mixon's making like 9. There's no way he's making more than Mixon. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think you nailed it.
I guess it might be what are the incentives? If the incentives, because whatever you feel about the Texans and how aggressive they should be, Casario's done a really good job of managing the cap where these like huge guarantees, et cetera, but they're shorter-term contracts, and if you go out 2 years from now, in 2027, the Texans have one of the best cap situations in the league.
Yep.
So they have a lot of flexibility to kind of push money off into the future, and it's not irresponsibly so. So if the incentives are something like he's on the roster and he gets this and that and that, I'll be a little disappointed.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's a lot more performance-based.
I bet it's both. I bet it's is he on the day, is he on the game day roster, and then he's got probably season incentives for yards and things like that, if I had to guess.
One of the other things that a lot of people I've seen bring up, and I did a live stream on this last night, a lot of people brought up, man, he's got such a reputation as just the right kind of guy.
Yep.
Works his butt off, like cares about the team, all those things that and I think Chubb is the classic guy that I don't think you would have had a Myles Garrett type situation. I know he had a little bit of a contract leveraging there a couple years ago. Yeah. But it seems like he wanted to do right by the team and his teammates, and I think he's a good guy to have in that locker room.
I think a lot of times, and we'll play this in the 7 o'clock hour, but a lot of times you can gauge what kind of guy it was, at least, by how the city that's losing him is reacting. They hate this in Cleveland. They hate this in Cleveland. There were people in Cleveland that knew he was a shell of his former self, but just wanted him back on the team because he's Nick Chubb.
Because he's the right kind of guy. I think I'm guessing there are a lot of people in Cleveland that are like, all right, you guys bent over backwards for Myles Garrett, who's awesome and everything, but the same about him that I do about Nick Chubb.
That's exactly right. We'll get to that in the 7 o'clock hour. Aaron Wilson had a really good sit-down with C.J. Gardner Johnson over the weekend. I don't know if it was over the weekend or how recently it was. But the quotes in the video started dropping this weekend from the interview. Ben, we may need to skip around a little bit here. The most interesting quote to me was, let's do C.J. Gardner Johnson too, Ben. On his new team, C.J. Gardner Johnson was not at OTAs. His explanation as to why he missed voluntary OTAs with his new team.
The week I was there, it was very, very closer than places I've been before. Because this is a brand new organization. We're trying to be the first team to put a bull on the ring. That's something that, what is organization, what, really 10 years in here, really not really crazy, 10 plus, 15, really not really too many years. So I had to step back. I'm too much sometimes, and I think coming off a Super Bowl is a little too much for guys who, feel like they're at the top of their profession right now because of who they are. And that's respectable. So me, I had to step back and I had to humble up because now I'm at the bottom of the mountain with a team that never to the top. So I can't come at the top of the mountain, bring the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain. I can't do that.
Okay, so just to explain the beginning there, he was here for a week back in April. He did media. Remember, he had his hat. The way I hear that, Seth, is C.J. Gardner Johnson is admitting that maybe he can be a little bit extra. It can be a little too much.
Well, but almost like that because he's coming from a place where almost he's come off an experience that's too good. And I don't know if the Texans are ready to handle everything that I bring.
Yeah.
This is like, hey, I can't give this kid his first beer and then give him his chased by black tar heroin.
Yeah.
They can't handle exactly me in my purest form.
Oh,
yes.
God.
We need to ease them into me.
I love that. And you know what? I give him a complete pass for it as well. Good job. Good self-awareness, C.J. Gardner Johnson.
It's funny how this goes by various teams and whatever situation guys are in. When it comes to OTAs, it's weird. It's almost arbitrary when people make a big deal out of an OTA, a voluntary OTA absence or not, because there are multiple other veteran players, especially on the defensive line, that weren't there for voluntary OTAs. And I don't think for injury purposes or whatever. They're just veterans exercising their rights. By and large, it's usually not a big deal. But when a guy just got traded for and he's got a reputation or at least eyebrows raised about like, hey, what kind of guy is this? Then it starts to get more attention. But for whatever it's worth, nobody really focused in on the fact that C.J. Gardner Johnson wasn't out there last week.
I think fans in general have gotten more forgiving for guys missing OTAs. And I think this era of Texans football, D'Amico doesn't seem as worked up as maybe previous head coaches might have been about.
Well, they've all gotten the memo, and teams have been fined if they are critical of any veterans. So they try really hard to not.
Yeah, that's true.
To at least act like, no,
that's a good point. Maybe it's different.
Yeah.
Maybe the chatter behind the scenes is different than what he's saying in front of a microphone. That's fair. I don't really care. Like, I think tomorrow will be the big one. If they're missing the mandatory stuff, then something's up.
That is the one that that's way more consistent. When guys miss mandatory minicamp, like with Aaron Rodgers last year, people are more inclined to be like, hey, what the hell, man?
Yeah, exactly.
And then we start caring about the money they're missing out on.
That's right.
How could you? You hate this team so much that you're giving up $300,000 or whatever it is?
I'll tell you this, though. Someone tweeted yesterday, I guess Lamar Jackson, some of these guys have bonuses built in if they do show up for the voluntary stuff. And I guess Lamar Jackson's got like a $750,000 workout bonus if he shows up for the voluntary stuff, and he doesn't show up for it.
I know.
$750, dude. I know you make $60 million a year, but $750.
And people ask, like, why would they even put that into the contract? I saw a lot of people criticizing Lamar Jackson or wondering whether he should have an agent or something. Some of it just comes down to the team has a policy that they're going to put those workout bonuses in, and they're not like, okay, it's going to be in there.
Yeah.
And the player knows it up front and has already figured, no, I'm not going to do that.
That's right.
I don't know if there's any amount of money. I don't think if I were a billionaire, I could turn down the $750,000 to show up at minicamp.
Workouts.
Yeah. Easy to say when you're not a billionaire.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things I say I would do if I were a billionaire that I know are bogus.
Dude,
I feel like I actually would.
I promise you, I would. Well, if I became one from like there was a time in my radio career that I had like $170 in my checking account. So just knowing that I experienced that, I'd be like, on principle, I've got to go to this $750,000 thing, especially at like a foundation or something like that. Like you give it to your charity.
Yeah,
whatever.
just give it. Yeah.
You know? Like,
I don't know, but they're also.
I don't want to
making
paint
that
Lamar Jackson as the devil or anything like that. But
but at the same time, when you put yourself in that, like, okay, they're also making that much in interest over any given period of time. So I'll give it. Listen, I'm giving the money to charity. I just whatever. Yeah.
I understand. Lamar Jackson's time is more valuable than mine on an hourly basis. I get that. I totally understand that.
You know what he'd say? You could say, hey, this $750,000 is money that just goes back into the salary cap. So I'm helping the team out.
He did that. That's actually true.
Yeah, I am giving you $750,000 extra to just go ahead and spend on other players.
Which is way easier to do if you play for the Ravens, a team that makes really good decisions with the salary cap. You're playing for like any of like 25 other teams. You'd be like, all right. Here you go.
You know what? That is a whole other topic, by the way. I mean, that's when guys like Pat Mahomes signed the deal they did, which was very team-friendly. Yeah. It's a lot easier to say, look, I'm willing to take less if you trust that they're going to do the right thing with the money.
Yeah.
It's like loaning money to your one friend who's a solid citizen versus your other friend who's a gambling addict.
He's a crackhead or something.
Yeah, right. Like, okay, no, I don't trust giving you this money.
Yeah, a lot of crackheads on these GM streets in the NFL, man. I'm just telling you.